Good morning. Can I just confirm that that you can hear and see me okay from your side? So first of all, I'd just like to apologise on the delay for this session. Running these conferences virtually does have some challenges in terms of managing the agenda items and when things are back to back and just making sure things run smoothly. But we do have 40 minutes in the agenda for this session. So I would like to welcome you all to our panel discussion today on how blockchain and artificial intelligence can help registries to support business. As somebody with a background in computer science and working for Companies House, this is a conversation and panel that I'm very much looking forward to, and it's a topic that's very close to me. The developments in technology never cease to amaze me. It seems like the world has changed on a daily basis. Data is more valuable than ever, and with that new data becomes new opportunities. As registries, we all have a responsibility to ensure that our data is being used in the best way possible. The panel itself will be hosted and moderated by Robert Corinda. Robert's background in the area of AI and blockchain is extensive, to say the least. Robert serves as Secretary for the Blockchain Association of Uganda, of which he is a founding member. He is Director and Chief Counsel at Crypto Savannah, Uganda's leading digital transformation company and the first and foremost player in the blockchain space. And he has also been involved in drafting Uganda's blockchain strategies. Finally, he has an extensive legal background as founding partner and heads up a law firm as well, heavily involved in technology practices. It is without further ado that I'd like to hand over to Robert to begin our conversation today.
Good morning. I hope we're doing well. Hi, my name is Robert Kirunda. Thank you very much for such a humbling introduction. And it's my privilege today to moderate this session on a topic that's very dear to me. And that's how blockchain can facilitate the work of corporate registries across the world. I have the privilege of moderating a session with two very, very distinguished speakers. One of them, a dear personal friend of mine. I like to boast when I am speaking about people I know. But we have today two very eloquent people, and we're going to be talking about blockchain and how this is aiding registries. We will be joined by Vivek Meena, who's a Deputy Director in the Office of the Ministry of Corporate Affairs in the Government of India. We'll also be joined by Russell Perry, who's a co-founder and chief executive of company, and Mr. Noah Balesamvu, who wears many hats but is the head of technology at Savannah, branded as Savannah but known mostly as Crypto Savannah in Uganda, and Uganda's leading blockchain enterprise. Emerging technologies are shaping the way that we do our work, and naturally, the space of registries is one of those that must be disrupted or is being disrupted consistently and in a rapid way. Just before we started the previous session, I was talking with some of the gentlemen here, and they were saying about how between March 2020 and today, things have changed fundamentally. If you went to register a company with documents in Uganda in March 2020, you came with hard copies. That was the normal thing. It was abnormal for you to go and say, what can I do? Today, if you go with documents, that's the abnormal thing if you want to register a company. And so this afternoon, we will have the privilege of hearing about how blockchain and hopefully artificial intelligence fit in that context. And to kick us off, may I invite Vivek Meena to share his thoughts, if ever so briefly, on where you see and what's going on in India with regard to emerging technologies and registries.
Hi, good day to everyone. I hope I'm audible to everyone.
Hi, yes, I can confirm we can hear and see you.
Okay.
Yes, we can hear you as well.
I had a presentation I wanted to share for this meeting. Just a moment. So I'll be talking about the use of artificial intelligence and machine learning in our Indian registry portal, which is the MCA21 portal. So our registry portal MCA21, this was digitized in the year of 2006. And since then we've had two iterations. So from 2006 to 2013 was the first version of MCA21, wherein the focus was to digitize all the processes that were physical before it. So once, and along with that, the digitization of the existing record also is part of the, one of the objectives of version 1. Then from 2013 to 2020, we had our version 2 of MCA21 portal, wherein, we focused on improving the processes, existing processes, and how we can utilize technology to further ease the business development in the country and improve the corporate governance. Going forward, we are planning to launch our version 3 portal. So in that portal, we are planning to have data analytics, artificial intelligence, and machine learning that will aid us in the ease of doing business as well as improving the corporate governance in India. So in the version 3, we've identified 4 key areas where we will be leveraging the artificial intelligence to assist us in the MCA21 functioning. The first one is the name availability application for new companies. So the name availability applications are currently guided by the Companies Incorporation rules under the Companies Act of 2013. So in this basic idea is that the companies should not be incorporated with similar names or any trademark that is already there. That should not be given to somebody who's not authorized to use that trademark. So some of the things are very easy for the system to reject and to accept. However, the complication arises from the translation of English text to Hindi and vice versa, from Hindi to English text and the phonetically similar words. So for that, we are trying to use the machine learning process and data-driven AI, artificial intelligence that will assist us in identifying the cases where the names are similar. And this flag will be provided to the stakeholder at the time of applying for the company application. We will be giving them, a signal that this proposed name might be similar to an existing company, and how it is similar, we'll also be providing him so that he has an understanding as to, the chances of approval of that application there and then itself. So, as with any application of AI ML, this will be based on a lot of data. And, although we will be using our already existing application data, whatever applications that we've already received, we hope that going forward, it will continue to strengthen, and we will have a feedback mechanism to, have an oversight as to whatever we are doing, whether it's going right or not. Second aspect where we are planning to use it is in the e-consultation module. So the process in India, generally, when the bill is introduced in the parliament for being enacted as an act, so that bill is, put forth to the public to give their comments. The current process is that we take the comments through the email and then, collate it, and whatever meaningful derivation are there from the sentences, all this exercise is done manually. So in e-consultation module, what we are doing is the artificial intelligence and machine learning, language processing, this will assist the stakeholders. The stakeholder in this case will be the policymakers, that is the Ministry of Corporate Affairs. It will club the similar comments that are submitted by the users. It will also make a gist of the comments that are being submitted by the users, so that it becomes easier for the policymakers to analyze what are the comments that have been received. Along with that, it will also provide a very intelligent dashboard so that the policymakers can also analyze as to what geography are the comments coming from. Is there a specific, pressure group that is giving certain type of inputs, so that the policymakers have a bird eye view of the overall sentiments of the public and what type of comments are being given from one category of users. Then another functionality that we plan to add in our newer portal will be the chatbot functionality. So chatbot functionality is a very common feature nowadays. We see a lot of, the banks in India are using it, and a lot of international organizations have also started chatbot functionality. In India, our primary focus for this chatbot functionality will be to improve the grievance handling mechanism. So as part of the MCA 21 portal, whenever there's an issue with the application, the filing of any form or application for a name, for example, if there is a technical issue or there is some other issue, so we have a help desk mechanism to assist the users for the grievance handling, and we have a very strict service level agreements with our service provider. So that is being handled, but right now a lot of this exercise is manual. And going forward, this chatbot functionality, we hope, will provide a much quicker resolution to the grievances. And we hope that, that the type of responses received by the stakeholders will also be much more intelligent and much more functional to them. This will also give, help us analyze the type of inputs that we are receiving, so that we can make meaningful interventions, policy interventions, to further improve the grievance handling mechanism. Then the last area and the most important area in terms of corporate governance is the early warning system. So a fundamental part of this new version MCA 21 portal, version 3, will use the data that is there in our registry along with data from other Government of India regulators. Those data will be used and will be analyzed to flag some early warning signals for any corporate frauds that can come up in the future. And we've built some algorithms for this, and we will be we will be inputting some data that is already with us for the known issues, and we will be monitoring this on a constant basis, so that whatever alteration changes that we have to make in the system, that can be done. And for that, we will have a lab that will be specifically looking after the functioning of this early warning system. So within this system, we will be utilizing data from MCA and other corporate regulators to identify the patterns. There will be constant review, as I've already said. Along with that, we will have a risk profiling of corporates and directors. This will be again based on the data that we have internally, along with data we get from other regulators. And this profiling, it will assist us in targeting some, some services to the corporates or directors who are, much more compliant with our system. And we hope to do that going forward. But these are the four main areas that we've focused on in our newer version, MCA 21 version 3. As of now, we are not utilizing the blockchain mechanism, and we do not, plan to use it in the version 3. But the use of artificial intelligence and machine learning will increase going forward with time. So that is all from me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vivek. That's a really good start for the conversation and to look at AI. I'm sure there will be questions coming in. But I think it just naturally follows that we would now go to Noah Balesham to walk us through the blockchain side of this conversation and to get us started on that discussion. Noah.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Robert, for that introduction. Thank you, URSB and the greater CRF community for the opportunity to share our thoughts on how we believe blockchain can aid in the work of registry and aid businesses in these interesting times. I don't know whether my presentation is up. Okay, great. Thank you. So as introduced, my name is Noah. I currently serve as the head of technology at Savannah. Savannah is a digital transformation company, and we are tasked to, and what we do is basically we help governments, businesses, and development organizations make sense of emerging technologies and harness them to be more profitable, more equitable, and more sustainable. So when we talk about blockchain, not to take it for granted that everyone understands what this technology is, I'll just briefly highlight its main features and the things and the current benefits that are being enjoyed by the people that are using this technology. And so I'll not delve too much into how it works, but rather what value it brings to an organization. And the first on this value that it brings to an organization is greater transparency. It does this because the way it stores information, the way blockchain technology stores information is in a transparent ledger that is visible to all necessary stakeholders. And I'm using those words carefully because there are different types of blockchain. There are public blockchains where this transparency is public. There are private blockchains where this transparency is limited to the organization that has built it or to specific individuals or roles within the organization. And then there are hybrid blockchains where it's a mix between public and private blockchains. So greater transparency. Enhanced security is yet another feature that blockchain brings, as opposed to traditional databases where there is a single point of failure or a single point of compromise. Blockchains distribute that vulnerability across all participating networks or machines. So there is no single point of failure, and that increases any threat landscape or increases its vulnerability to attack. So any blockchain deployed system is inherently more secure. In addition, blockchain employs the use of advanced cryptography in order to secure not only the system or the data at rest, but it also takes advantage of transactional encryption, meaning that the write and read operations on a blockchain are all encrypted, which makes it that much harder to crack. And of course, another thing that blockchains bring to an ecosystem is improved traceability. Blockchain systems work on a write-only mechanism, meaning that once an information is written onto a particular blockchain, it is not deleted, it is not removed. It is simply, the values are changed over time depending on the number of transactions, but all historical data is stored. And so what that does, it increases traceability and auditability of the data that's held on a blockchain, meaning that if you're working with multiple data sources, multiple parties that are transacting together, this can bring greater visibility of any movement of information. And I'll give examples a bit later. There's also increased efficiency and speed. Because there's no single resource that stores all the data and all the transactions, it is instead distributed to multiple centers. This makes blockchain deployments lighter and more cost-effective. In a typical deployment compared to a traditional database, blockchain costs can be as low as 10 to 1 compared to a traditional database, meaning that a blockchain is about 10 times cheaper to deploy and maintain as a comparative traditional database. This increases not only efficiency, but because it works on a distributed network, it also increases the speed. So I've spoken about reduced costs, increased efficiency, improved traceability, and enhanced security, which coupled with greater transparency leads to a technology that can completely revolutionize an organization, especially those that deal with registration or customer information or KYC data. So a blockchain does not exist in a silo. It can be applied well or it can be misapplied. And against popular belief, blockchain is not a solution looking for a problem, but there are problems that exist that blockchain can present unique ways of solving. Traditional organizations like registries from the many stories that we have had today, pre-COVID, have suffered from manual processes that are slow. They used to be paper-based, but now because of what the COVID pandemic has brought, there's been accelerated digitization of these services. However, in many cases, the digitization process simply takes a paper-based process and digitizes it. Instead of using digital systems built from the ground up. So rather than dealing with papers, we're dealing with PDFs. the mentality is still the same, even though we are using computers. There is a need to be a rethink from the ground up on how we can make digitally native solutions for this new digital age. And so there's a lot of manual processes that are still slow, even though they are computer-based. There are multiple stakeholders who need to have real-time visibility of data, a single store of truth. The typical example here in Uganda is when you want to open a bank account. The bank, before you get, before you get a bank account, you need the registration bureau to certify the status of the business. So you have two entities that need to have real-time visibility of the current status of a business. These are two massive systems, the banking KYC system and the registration system. And any integration of these will either cost a lot of money or will be a slow process. And so and then also it is random, it is not standardized across the country. Some banks have advanced systems, other banks don't have advanced systems. I'm using banking as a typical example, but this can be expanded to many other sectors, any other sector that interfaces with the registration bureau. And so because of that lack of standardization and that disparity between state of systems across different industries, that process can have a lot of friction. And of course, we also deal with disjointed data silos. You find that regarding business registration, you have one set of data. Regarding certificates and registrations, you have a set of data. Regarding business owners, you have another set of data. And these all have to be corroborated with another set of data. For example, you need to confirm the status of business directors. That means you need updated information from our citizen registry. So that's many data silos and many data sets need to talk to each other and all have and all have to tell the same story. Otherwise, you have disjointed stories being told. And so this is the challenges that we are facing right now. And even though with the increased digitization, now we are seeing that data is still playing a central role, but different people are going at it in different ways. And this is a typical example or typical opportune environment that blockchain can shine, because it has a unique characteristic where it can bring multiple data owners, multiple stakeholders into a single platform, a single network that has a single source of truth. So if you're looking at Noah, for example, you know his status at the Revenue Authority. You can verify the businesses that he owns at the registry, and you can also know that from a fact that he's actually a legal bona fide Ugandan citizen from the data that you collect from our citizen registry. So it has the ability to bring all these data sets into a single unit, a source of truth. How does it help businesses? We can move on to the next slide. Yes, so what can it do? A blockchain-based registry platform can integrate governments and businesses and any other intermediaries as what we call nodes or computing units at the network. And it enhances transparency and streamlines the process of sharing of registry. Initially, in describing what blockchain can do, I mentioned that at a transactional level, it encrypts this data. And in Uganda, for example, we have a recent law that was passed, the Data Privacy and Protection Act, which mandates everyone who's holding personally identifiable information to the rigidity of data protection, meaning that even as this information is shared between entities, what a blockchain can do is that it can still maintain the highest level of user privacy and user interaction as and when required, because a blockchain will require ultimately the user consent, which is a principle of data protection when sharing data. Blockchains also enable agile approach to providing the underlying foundation for developing solutions of a modular nature and architecture, meaning that in case of any new system that needs to be automated, and the directors here at URSB have been talking about how they're automating almost all their processes, meaning these are different applications, these are different data sets. All of these can be easily appended to a blockchain without any significant change in cost in the underlying base infrastructure. And then this makes speed of deployment higher and cost of deployment is significantly reduced. With governments strategically looking towards rationalizing registries and more, and as technology develops, we're starting to see new services that require these regulators and registries to adapt to these changing technologies. Blockchain can give them a fundamental elastic framework that can adapt to the changes in government. So as technology changes the way citizens interact with their governments, we are building an infrastructure that can be able to adapt and comply with those changes. So what are the outcomes? What do we see as the future that is within reach? Blockchains can start, will allow markets to get more closer integrated because we're reducing barriers of entry. We talked about the ease of doing business. Deploying a blockchain can significantly improve your ranking in the ease of doing business. And I know read studies about countries like Singapore and countries like Dubai, the United Arab Emirates that have deployed blockchain. And through their use, they are seeing improvement in their ease of doing business scores. Of course, job growth is accelerated due to access to capital. We did a study recently in partnership with Uganda Revenue, with the Registration Bureau, and we discovered by working together with banks and the URSB that just by 60% of the application for bank loans were rejected because of poor registration information or because of lack of transparency to registration information. So if the bank had a real-time access to this information, it would significantly improve the application process for loans. And so we are seeing tangible benefits by deploying this. So that study has already been conducted, and it's a tangible benefit that we're looking to extract from deploying one. And then of course, with the new hybrid work environment, where there's job mobility and enhanced, when you're looking at things like certificates, the portability of digital certificates, you no longer have to go to the entity. But if URSB issues you with any certificate, that can be globally, it can be globally verified for authenticity by deploying it on a similar technologies like blockchain. There's also massive opportunities when you bring in even the real estate industry and the players there. So I cannot fully exhaust the benefits. However, there are studies. There's a recent study done by the PwC called The Time for Trust, which highlights over $1.7 trillion worth of value that will be unlocked by blockchain technology alone being deployed over the next 10 years. So we're just simply scratching the surface on how this new and emerging technology can help businesses, especially in their interface with governments. And with those few remarks, I thank you.
Thank you very much, Noah. Listening to Noah is always such a joy. Taming him to the constraints of time, unfortunately, restricts us. But thank you, Noah, for painting for us the picture of where blockchain is going in the world. And the report, the PwC report he just mentioned, makes for a very interesting read if anyone hasn't come across it or is looking to understand where these technologies, especially blockchain, will interact with the business community. But that's a good point for us to move to Russell Perry, who is the founder and CEO at the company. And having heard from Vivek on AI and how that's transforming the work of the registries in India, and heard from Noah about blockchain and the potential that it has, I'm hoping that Russell Perry will bring those two together and tell us about how the business community is going to benefit and how registrars and the duties of registrars will go along. The registrars and their duties will go a long way in using blockchain and AI to solve some of the world's biggest problems. Over to you, Russell. Please do tell us some more about yourself and the amazing work that you're doing at the company.
Yeah. Thank you very much. It's really an honor to be here today and showcase what company's working on and also how we work together with the different registers. Thank you also for the introduction. Once again, my name is Russell Perry. I'm the founder and CEO of company. Wanted to give you a little bit overview of who we are. So we're a RegTech platform located and headquartered here in Vienna, Austria. We're about 60 people today with teams all across the world. We are a Austrian government clearinghouse of registers connecting to the commercial register and also the land register. And we're also one of the early distributors of the EBR network since nearly 9 years, almost 10 years now. And we, of course, interconnect with a lot of the commercial registers and tax authorities around the world. With many of you sitting here today, you know us, you know how we also provide our services to the industry. And to take a step back, we are, of course, focusing on a specific part when we talk about KYC and KYB. But if we look at the big problem and what is at stake, it's really all about money laundering, right? It's more than $1 trillion every year that is conducted illegally. And the money laundering also has economic impact. It has social impact, right? It also undermines the legitimate private sector, and especially the small and medium-sized enterprises. And what we are approaching here is not only the demand from, for example, financial institutions, banks, financial service providers, payment providers, but we're establishing together with the registers, together with you, this first line of defense against money laundering. And how do we do that? Well, it is really all about data. And I think Noah also pointed that out quite nicely, saying, you know, the single source of truth is necessary, not just for the efficiency gains of, you know, opening up a bank account or conducting financial services, but also tackling this really, really big problem, which is money laundering. And as you know, we have a very, very strong opinion about the roles that registers play. We believe that registers are very, very vital and an essential part of the economic and digital infrastructure of countries, right? If you do not have commercial registers operating efficiently, if they're not accessible, if they're not funded well enough, obviously business cannot conduct business, cannot conduct trade. So it is a vital infrastructure. And I think also if we look at the interoperability today, it is very limited, but it is key to ensure that not only the data within the registers are available and accessible on demand for those that require the verification of companies, the verification of the directors and officers, the verification of the ultimate beneficial owners, but also interoperability is key in the data sets cross borders, supporting trade and fighting, of course, money laundering. And this is where, you know, public and private partnerships make sense, to where there's an exchange also of what is needed from an industry side, because often you have new legislation, but the legislation doesn't always reflect what the industry actually has to do, or that the registers are are able to provide. And we're talking a lot about technology today, right? We're talking about AI, we're talking about blockchain, and it really is now the time to embrace this next step and embrace the technology in a combination to help us tackle the business needs, tackle the needs from a regulatory standpoint, and also to fight money laundering. And if we look at the two areas, you know, AI and blockchain, there's a lot of hype, of course, about these two words. But let's look at it from a practical standpoint. So if we apply artificial intelligence, there is a simple benefit that we can unlock data that is locked in commercial registers and other registers around the world. There's reports that about 85% of company data is actually locked in unstructured formats, so PDFs and TIFFs. And with technology, we're able to unlock the unstructured data, make it machine readable, integrate it into systems that allow for the instant verification of entities and the people behind. And with the next step, and I think also Noah pointed this out, we talk about blockchain. We're also talking about real-time systems, right? Real-time verification, verifying entities and the people behind at the time of account opening, at the time of provisioning new services, at the time exactly when re-verification needs to be conducted. And through blockchain, we're able to also empower that data. So we've unlocked it, but we also can empower it. And the interoperability allows us also to ensure that we have verified entities across the entire value chain. And also the traceability. You know, if there's a change, there's an update to an entity, there's a new director and officer, adding the traceability of these changes creates transparency. And that again allows us to provide more efficient systems back to industry. And by embedding the trust, because we have the traceability, because we have the interoperability, also means there's much less friction in trade and in business, with a strong focus, of course, on small and medium-sized enterprises who all of a sudden have to not worry about the verification. They do not have to, they don't see delays, etc., when they're trying to conduct business. And at the same time, in combination between the registers, the digital economic infrastructure of the countries, technology providers in between, and technology embraced, such as AI and blockchain, at the end, we can also fight money laundering, which has obviously business benefits, economic benefits, and social benefits. So I would like to stop right here and look forward to additional questions and also discussion with the panelists. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Russell, for what a stimulating presentation to bring it all together. The fight against anti-money laundering is always a complicated one. But drawing the connection between registration of businesses and integrating interoperability, I like how you brought all the points together in a way that usually are all separate conversations. We're happy to take some questions. If anyone has them, we're happy to take them. But let me perhaps start with Russell, myself, if I may, and this is sort of the benefit of being the moderator. What do you think would be the single largest problem in achieving interoperability from the perspective of a corporate registrar? What do you think would be the single largest hindrance to solving the problems around interoperability?
I think we have that hindrance today because if we look at the different systems and the registers that are focusing on servicing, based on legislation, the requirements for one country. I think in order to unlock that or to break that hindrance, as you pointed out, would be to ensure that we have interoperability on the data structure and that we have a common language that can be deployed for API infrastructure. So the registers can also talk to one another and also ensure that services can be built on top.
Interesting. Maybe that's a good place to ask Noah, from where you see it and from the study. You mentioned the study that was done with the Bureau and the lessons you're seeing there. Where do you see these? So, because from what Russell is saying, we need to solve the interoperability problem and the opportunity is there. But at the same time, you did this study that had some interesting findings. Could you tell us about those 2 points and why they made?
Thank you, Robert. The journey is not as, let me not put it easy, but as straightforward, because again, when we talk about different silos, these are entities that have jurisdictional mandate over the data that they collect. And so interoperability must start also from the mandate level. I'll give you an example of KYC. KYC is a very typical challenge that is faced, especially with registries, because then it's a very important thing for financial transactions. In the fintech industry, we are seeing a huge disruption right now where financial institutions are fully digital. I know of instances, especially with the rise of neobanks, where you have a financial institution that's completely run automated through code. Now then the jurisdictional questions then come in. The Registration Services Bureau have its list of requirements of a business. The financial regulator have their requirements of the business. And then there are also other regulators like the Financial Intelligence Authority or other such entities that also need to look at these KYC information, but from the lens of transactions. So when we talk interoperability, all of these have mandates that protect their right over the particular data set. And so we need to unpack how these mandates can work together. And so it's not just a tech patch, you don't install a software somewhere and all of a sudden you'll have interoperability. We also have to address the mandate question and the regulation question before this, and then technology then comes to fit, to bridge those technical pieces together. The report you talk about was done in conjunction with the Financial Sector Deepening Uganda, in partnership with the Uganda Registration Services Bureau. And they were looking at what would the impact be if KYC was harmonized between URSB and a bank. And so it was like an experiment that was studied. And they were looking at what can that unlock? And a few of the statistics there, I'm sure the URSB has a report somewhere up on their website. But there were interesting findings. And the first statistic that I threw out there was a huge percentage of business loan applications are rejected because of poor data. Either the director's information is not updated, and because of the interface between businesses and the URSB is so special, SPA, our pronunciations. But it's touch and go. I'm only going to URSB once a year because I have to file returns, and also I want to register my business, or there's a change in director. So it is once in a while, but during all that time transactions are happening, a data trail is being collected. So at that point, when you go to a bank and they ask for that information, it's at the very worst a year old. And so there's a lot of friction there. And so by creating a unified, store of trust, where URSB can trust this entity that the information that they're presenting is the current state of affairs. The bank can trust this entity because the information they're seeing on the portal that's powered by a blockchain is real time and is valid. They can check even the status of their directors. Once this information is brought and at a single click, you'll find not only are you increasing trust and speed, but you're also increasing you're also at some point reducing costs. Because guess what? There are intermediaries that are put in this relationship between banks and the registry just for trust purposes. Because I don't trust the entity itself, I will hire a law firm to verify information from the registry. So by creating this platform that brings this data in a trusted way to all parties involved, that cuts down not only costs, but even speed. And so that's, I know I've answered your question through a story, but it's the thing is that there are mandates, there are regulatory mandates that need to be honored before you start plugging in technology. But even when you plug in technology, we need to understand that there are multiple parties that will need, and the technology must serve towards bringing trust to the platform. I know of a country where they implemented a blockchain in a transaction space to do with lands. And the biggest resistance was not from the transactive parties or from the end users. It was from the intermediaries whose role was being not replaced, but being redefined. And so you find that because they claim they had jurisdictional role, they have a jurisdictional role to play that intermediary role. But then here is a technology that says, look, we don't need it anymore. So are we going to force the technology to work with our archaic laws? Or are we bold enough to look at these laws and say, now they have been overtaken by technology, we need to go back to the drawing board? So that question there has to be answered. Otherwise, technology is a plug and play, and it'll work.
Thank you very much, Noah.
If I may just add to some of the comments by Noah, I fully agree with you. It has to start on the mandate level, right? We have to make sure that there's also common understanding that interoperability is a must and not something where there's, it's not only a technology, as is AI and blockchain, it's a technology, but it can only be deployed if it's also embraced. And to your point that you were talking in your example, Noah, also on intermediaries who were pushing back on new technology, and we see this in other jurisdictions where, especially from a bank side, but also other service providers are saying, "Oh, wait a minute, okay, we'll do blockchain, we'll do technology," but what they're looking at is creating a digital twin of an analog process, and this analog process is already inefficient because it's analog. So I think, when we look at the technology deployment and the mandate that needs to support that, there also has to be a step back. And when we draw the new systems, we say, we're not creating a digital twin. We're creating a process that's more efficient, more effective, because we have technology, but at the forefront, it has to obviously be the application. But creating a digital twin is not the way to increase effectiveness and efficiency, obviously.
I think you raise an interesting point. I'd never thought about the analogy of digital twins, creating a digital twin of an analog process. But I wanted to ask Vivek, if we still have him on the line, how they've gone about it in India, especially this point about mandates and jurisdiction, and what challenges you've seen, because you mentioned in your presentation earlier about a bill being presented in Parliament, and which tells me you're tinkering with the regulation and making sure that it's progressive. How have you gone about it, and what lessons can we take from India?
So thank you. So we've also been doing a study on the single source of truth. So that is a study that we are trying to integrate the corporate regulators, the data sets that we have, so that the filing as well as the corporate regulations that we are doing can be streamlined. And what we've experienced is that the technology is really not the hindrance in our cases. The hindrance, as Russell and Nohan have already pointed out. First is the jurisdictional issue that has to be sorted out. Then the legislations also, they restrict the data sharing, which is one of the problems, and the legislation, the changes in them also takes a lot of time. Third issues that we had was regarding the timelines of a particular filing. So, for example, one filing in India is done for the Corporate Affairs Ministry, and another filing is done for income tax. However, the period for which the filing is done can be different for certain companies, and to integrate such filing is a challenge in itself. Aside from this, there are some minor issues that we identified, like the definitions of certain fields, like the depreciation, for example, of the company that is calculated for income tax, and for example, for Ministry of Corporate Affairs. But those are the minor issues. I think the major issues that we found out was regarding the jurisdiction, has already been pointed out, and the legislative changes, that have to be done regarding the data secrecy and the shareability of a particular data.
Incredible. Thank you very much. I usually in a physical audience would say, would you join me in giving a round of applause to our distinguished panelists from across? Those of us who are joining us virtually, wherever you are, I hope that you tip your hat to them, all very seasoned, very experienced, and thank you so much. We're pressed for time, and I will just pass the session back to our day manager. Thank you.
Thank you very much.